Megyn Kelly has not been having a good couple days, y'all. She has not been having a good couple days. In fact, she's kind of been melting down. Now, Crystal made this point about her the other day, and I want to repeat it because I think it's totally accurate. Megyn Kelly is a good example of how independent media, whatever that is now, it's really not. This is just new corporate media is what this is. But people in independent media could actually be worse than their mainstream counterparts. Now, on this show, I'm against both independent media, corporate media and new corporate media, which is what I call the fake independent media. But when Megyn Kelly was on Fox News, she was actually better. She was more nuanced. She was more of an independent thinker. She's always been a conservative. There's no doubt about it. She's always leaned to the right. There's no doubt about that. But there was certainly more room for nuance and different perspectives and not going with the mob, breaking from orthodoxy a little bit here and there when she was on Fox News. Now that she's in the independent media landscape, she feels like, hey, in order to get the eyeballs, in order to get the clicks, I need to ride the wave. Ride the wave, y'all.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, Kyle Kulinski has caught up to me, even though he does this for a living and I don't make any money doing this, right? But I'm running this as a charity. He's running it as a business. It's for profit for him, which is the core problem with media, right? But just like how he was way behind on Russell Brand, I sniffed out Russell Brand real easy on what he was doing. Just very dishonest. Same thing with Cornel West. Same thing with Jimmy Dore. The list just goes on and on. Somehow I'm able to pick out, how much of a fraud these people are much faster than Kyle Kulinski. Is it because I'm smarter than Kyle Kulinski? I don't know. I don't think that really has much to do with it. The thing about it is Kyle Kulinski is blinded because he's in this toxic business, right? American media is a toxic business, right? And that's the issue. American for-profit media. It's not about corporate. And his wife uses this gimmick as part of her show, this whole we're the new mainstream media and, going on and on about how corporate media is so bad and look at CNN and MSNBC and talk about misinformation, but look at their misinformation, blah, 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 blah. Listen, man. Corporate media is not Satan. They're not the devil, right? What they are for-profit businesses that do what they do because of the profit incentives. Being an independent media doesn't change that, right? First of all, the CNN YouTube channel and all these independent media YouTubers who do news, they're getting money from the same corporations that are advertising on their companies, on their videos via AdSense, right? So number one, that part of the business, no different. Literally the same corporations are advertising on these independent media channels as on the corporate media channels, right? The main difference is a corporate, and by the way, what I'm about to say, YouTubers can do this as well, right? A YouTuber can do this as well. Many YouTubers don't have the knowledge or, necessarily to do this. They don't necessarily know about how the stuff works. And it's also easy to just let AdSense just do its thing in the background. But technically speaking, these YouTubers can do the same thing I'm about to say corporate media does. That's beyond just the normal AdSense automatic auctions, which is how the money comes in. Corporate media, I'm sure, has an advertising division. And these guys, talk directly to the advertisers and they could work out certain deals and negotiate certain things. So they wouldn't necessarily just rely on the automatic auction that happens with AdSense like most YouTubers. But still, ultimately, again, AdSense is the same kind of business model. But beyond that, corporate media, except for Fox is a little bit of a different animal, but generally speaking, they're not really ideological. Sure, there's people in corporate media that have their ideology and some of that can affect their certain biases, but generally speaking, a lot of these guys come from Ivy League schools, so they have the skill set and knowledge to be able to compensate for their biases and their ideology. Now, not everyone's on the same level, so just because they were trained on it doesn't mean everyone's the best at it. So I'm sure some of them are better than others at this, but generally they have the skill set. However, you got to remember why they're doing what they're doing. They're not doing it to inform us. They're doing it for money, right? So they're always going to have this distraction of what gets us more views, what gets us more engagement, what keeps our audience, right? Because you're running a business. They need to stay profitable, and that is the clash. It's just like, it's so ironic. I guess conflict of interest, right? It's just like how, people on the left would say, you shouldn't have these corporations involved in healthcare because healthcare should not be a business. They should not be focused on profits. It should be focused on helping people. Same thing goes to the news media, man. A lot of stuff that happens in this country, including healthcare, it's downstream of the media, right? Because the media informs people. It it produces the perspectives in the audience in terms of how they feel about things, and then they vote accordingly, right? So that's a little bit of a clash. But the bottom line is, independent media is far worse than mainstream media on average, right? And to a lot of people, it's just shocking because no one else says this, because the only, corporate media is not going to tell you this. And then the independent guys who are doing this for money, they're not going to tell you this either. They're not going to tell you that they're part of the toxic media that they like to critique. It's good for them in terms of, from a business perspective, to bash their competition, right? Oh, mainstream media, they're so bad. Look how awful they are. Unlike me in my basement, I'm much better than these guys, right? Not necessarily. In most cases, not the case. Let me tell you who's in independent media: Alex Jones, Steve Bannon, Brian Tyler Cohen. We'll never say a negative thing about Democrats. That weirdo in Canada who does all those clickbait titles, right? Plus a whole bunch of other random YouTubers. Black conservative something. You know what I mean? There's so many wackos. And you realize that most of the people in the news are independent. And these are random people, right? Some of them are poor, some of them are middle class, some of them are very, very wealthy. But ultimately, they're more incentivized than corporate news to be dishonest to you, right? Because if you have a contract with CNN, right, you got this nice contract, you're comfortable, you're in the, corporate world, you could go from CNN to MSNBC and all this kind of stuff, and you're making millions a year, right? There's so much infrastructure around you. There's less incentive for you compared to independent for you to go too crazy and dishonest. But if you're on your own, on a YouTube channel that could disappear overnight, YouTube could just wipe your channel out with no excuse, no explanation. You can't even talk to them, right? Imagine your entire business just wiped out like that. That's the business that you're in if you're doing independent media. You are far more vulnerable because it's just you. A lot of times it's just like a lot of these YouTubers, just one person or just a few people. Again, they don't have all this sort of infrastructure, so they're very vulnerable. A lot of them are not making the kind of money that these, like a major host on CNN, Fox News, multiple millions a year. And this is something that they're getting in through a contract. Again, everything's set up. They have a whole news team and there's so much stuff. Independent media, a lot of stuff is on you. And then the barrier to entry is so low. Anybody can pop up tomorrow with a YouTube channel and start, repeating, which is what a lot of these YouTubers, a lot of independent media, they're repeaters. They're not going out there doing the investigations. They're not breaking stories, right? They're not out there interviewing people. They are looking at the mainstream media reporting and then giving their take on it and then repeating it back, right? So ultimately, they are, very threatened by how so many random people can just come up. And we've seen it happen. Small channels pop up out of nowhere and just explode and dominate, right? All of a sudden your views start going down and your channel could be stagnant for a year. It's brutal out there. So the incentives to be dishonest are much higher. And then on top of that, what makes it worse is also the risks, right? Who's going to fire Tim Pool? No one is going to fire Tim Pool. We see corporate media hosts get fired. We see FCC fines issued, all kinds of stuff going on. You have a legal department, you have a board of directors, all this kind of stuff. You can't just be on corporate news and just say whatever. I know the bar is low, but they got a lot of red tape. On YouTube, you got no red tape, it's just you. You can get on YouTube and say whatever you want. So for example, you could be in Canada posting videos about Trump every single day, lying in clickbait titles, oh, Trump dies in a car crash. And then you look at the video like, what are you talking about? He didn't die. Like this guy literally, there's a guy like, I talked about him before, literally does this every day. Crazy clickbait titles, right? And he's incentivized to be more and more dishonest, more outrageous, right? And it's just so like vulnerable. These guys are so vulnerable and insecure. Like, oh my goodness, my channel, look at my metric. Oh, what am I gonna do? Oh, these new channels coming and get more views than me, and right? All the things that are the reasons for why corporate media is as bad as it is, there are times 10 in independent media, which is why independent media on average is far worse, right? And this guy is in independent media, and only now, again, he's always behind me on a lot of stuff like this. Only now he's realizing, wait a minute, independent media maybe not as special as I thought. Like, why would he be special? What's so special about you? Oh, I'm an independent. Okay. So that, how relevant is that when you have there's a lot of people who are dishonest, right? Like, how does that factor in, right? I'm an independent guy. I don't have any, big pharma telling me what to do or whatever. I can just say whatever. Really? And based on what you say, your income increases or decreases? So if I lie and I mislead people or I pander to people, I can make more money. If I'm more honest and objective, I make less money. Does that really sound like a formula for a better media? Now, some of the best media that we have do happen to be independent. But ultimately, things are so bad such that, in my view, if we had to make a decision about what media is available in this country, we'd be far better off to go back to the old days where corporate media was the only source. And that includes the damage from the things they don't tell us, right? And the things that they hide from us, and the things that they underreport. Those risks, to me, would balance out to where it would be a better outcome than if we were to get rid of mainstream media and have independent media be the only source, right? If you had to choose only one, I'm sorry, man. If CNN is the only news that people saw in this country, as bad as CNN is, it would be far better than if we just had independent media, right? Because which independent media we want? Race baiting young Turks? That's what we want. Anna, I don't know what she's doing, leaning more to the right, and it's just all of it. They got Dr. Rashad Ritchie was race baiting every day. Oh, look at the cop shoot a black man. Oh, this is racist, that. That's what we want. Oh, we want Tim Pool every day talking about Antifa this, Antifa that, and then liberal this. Oh, what about Ben Shapiro? That's the only news. Ben Shapiro. Tell me which independent news source, and this includes giving them access to, because you could say, like, for example, let's say Breaking Points. You say, well, Breaking Points, but the problem with them is, they don't have, reporters out there investigating and finding, they would need that stuff. Even if you get that stuff, right? Breaking Points has developed a right-leaning audience. So when you give them all those resources, are they going to all of a sudden now just ignore the fact that their audience is more right-leaning and therefore it's more profitable to have certain takes than others? And then this idea that, because you have your members, I got Patreon. So what? So, okay, I'm not being paid off by Russia. I'm not in some corporate world where, big pharma or whatever, and I'm only accountable to my audience. Okay, so what happens when your audience absolutely loves Trump, right? And that's the only one you're accounting to is your audience. If you know that Trump's a fraud and a buffoon, how's that going to work? How many Patreon people are going to stick with you when you start making videos about Trump telling the truth about him? Right? So the fact that you're only accountable to your audience, I mean, sure, that's cool. But, a lot of people in this country are very emotional, very tribal, right? So if you're only accountable to your audience, and your audience, more often than not, I don't know of any exceptions really, is going to be very tribal, right? So you're accountable to a tribe, and that's better than being accountable to Big Pharma or accountable to, the corporation you work for and whatever agendas they want to push. Like, how is that? So if your audience is just delusional on the Democrats, delusional on Biden, or delusional on Trump, whatever it is, right? And they don't want to hear the truth. You see the problem there? The only way to escape from the problem, first you have to establish what the problem is. The problem is for-profit media. As long as the media is focused on profits, that is where the problem comes in. That's where you want to pander. That's when you want to do propaganda, because that's more profitable. You've got to remove the profit. We need non-profit news media. That's the solution. Not independent media, not corporate news. If we had non-profit corporate news, that would be far better than for-profit independent news. Right? It's just like politics. We got to take the money out of it. Right? For the love of money is the root of all evil. This is the Debate Me channel. Debate Me comment section below. Click on the like button. Subscribe. Smash that bell. Be well.